Thanks for joining us. This is Omni View, episode 100, Balanced News Perspectives. Today is July 2nd, 2026. Here's the news, the perspectives, and the questions worth asking. That's episode 100, a big milestone. Thank you for being here. Europe's top court upholds a record $4.7 billion fine against Google, tightening oversight of dominant tech platforms that shape daily digital access for millions. The European Court of Justice rejected Alphabet's challenge to a 2018 European Commission penalty of roughly $4.7 billion. The original ruling found Google had abused its Android dominance by requiring device makers to pre-install its search and browser apps. The decision ends years of litigation and requires payment of the fine. Both European regulators and technology firms accept that Android holds a large share of mobile devices in Europe. The disagreement centers on whether pre-installation deals harmed competition or simply reflected consumer preference for integrated services. European regulators view the outcome as validation of their authority to curb practices that lock users into one company's ecosystem. Technology companies and some U.S. officials argue such fines risk fragmenting global markets and slowing innovation by punishing successful scale. How do different legal systems define abuse of dominance? Shifting now to Britain, where the Prime Minister will address a different kind of historical reckoning. Keir Starmer will apologize in Parliament for policies between 1949 and 1976 that led to an estimated 185,000 babies being removed from unmarried mothers in England and Wales. Campaigners and a Commons committee have pressed for both the statement and ongoing practical support. The government has not yet detailed what follow-up measures will accompany the apology. Survivors and parliamentary committees emphasize that an apology alone is insufficient without concrete services such as counseling and record access. Government statements frame the step as recognition of past state coercion, while noting limits on what retrospective policy can achieve decades later. What records remain available to affected families? Next, a development in a long-running energy infrastructure case. Prosecutors in Germany say a Ukrainian suspect acted on orders from Ukrainian state authorities when explosives were placed on the Nord Stream gas pipelines in 2022. The suspect faces formal charges. Russia has long accused Ukraine of involvement. Kiev has denied state direction. German investigators present evidence they say links the operation to official Ukrainian direction. Ukrainian officials maintain the attack served no state interest and point to other possible actors with access to the sites. What physical evidence has been made public so far? Meanwhile, in North Africa, voters went to the polls yesterday. Voters in Algeria went to the polls on July 2nd to elect a new parliament, 7 years after the Hirak protest movement. Several opposition groups are participating this time, though many citizens are still expected to abstain. Turnout in the previous election was 23%. Government officials present the vote as a routine democratic exercise that demonstrates stability. Opposition voices and protest organizers describe the process as offering limited real choice and point to persistent economic grievances. Which changes, if any, have been made to electoral rules since 2019? Turning to travel infrastructure, Berlin Airport is warning of major disruption later this year. The head of Berlin's airport stated that the EU's new entry-exit system will produce queues that are not bearable during peak holiday periods. The system requires biometric data from non-EU travelers. Implementation is scheduled for later this year. Airport operators highlight practical capacity limits at major hubs and call for phased rollout or extra staffing. EU officials stress the system's role in improving security and tracking overstays. Which countries will be most affected by the new requirements? In Indonesia, a Sharia court handed down corporal punishment this week. A Sharia court in Aceh province sentenced an unmarried man and woman to 21 lashes each after they were convicted of kissing during a live stream. The punishment was carried out in front of at least 100 witnesses. The province applies its own version of Islamic criminal law. Provincial authorities describe the sentence as enforcement of local moral standards that enjoy community support. Human rights organizations argue the public nature of the punishment violates international standards on corporal penalties. How does Aceh's legal system interact with Indonesia's national criminal code? Finally, reports from Southern Africa describe large-scale returns driven by protests. Protests demanding the removal of undocumented migrants have led an estimated 15,000 people to return to Malawi. Demonstrators blame foreign nationals for unemployment and crime. South African authorities and rights groups dispute those causal claims. Protest organizers maintain that rapid migration strains public services and job markets. Government and civil society groups counter that migrants contribute economically and that violence targets people based on nationality rather than legal status. What legal pathways exist for migrants already in South Africa? Brazilian rail operator VLI SA has opened a dedicated corridor to move soy meal from interior growing regions to export ports. The new line is intended to reduce current transport constraints that limit volumes from farms to ships. Brazil remains the top global supplier of the animal feed ingredient. Agricultural shippers note the added capacity could cut logistics expenses for producers. Environmental organizations raise concerns that higher throughput may add pressure on land conversion and forest cover. Observers on both sides agree existing rail lines already constrain how much product can leave the interior each season. NVIDIA has rolled out a program that lets selected startups exchange access to its processors for a portion of future revenue instead of paying cash upfront. The offer focuses on firms developing artificial intelligence applications that need large-scale training capacity. Contract details will differ according to each customer's stage and project scope. NVIDIA presents the arrangement as a method to reduce early cash outlays while sharing upside. Some founders and investors have voiced worries that the model might create lasting supplier dependence or affect equity stakes. All parties recognize that advanced model training demands significant computing resources. Meta has introduced a subscription requirement for certain on-device artificial intelligence functions in its smart glasses. The devices themselves continue to be sold as a one-time purchase. The company states the recurring fee will support ongoing development and cloud services. Consumer advocates contend the change lowers the effective value of the original hardware outlay. Both Meta and critics acknowledge the glasses combine local processing with cloud resources. The disagreement centers on whether subscriptions represent an equitable method to finance further upgrades. The Summer of Lud Festival in New York City is running workshops aimed at lowering dependence on smartphones and social platforms. Organizers have designed sessions for younger adults who report fatigue with continuous connectivity. Activities include practical exercises for adjusting digital routines. Participants describe the gathering as an opportunity to regain focus and ease pressure from algorithm-driven content. Technology firms and digital economy voices maintain that total disconnection is impractical and that moderation tools already exist. Both groups recognize elevated screen time figures among young adults. Arsonists set fire to a car owned by former boxer Ricky Hatton outside his son's residence in Greater Manchester. Police are classifying the incident as a deliberate attack. No one was injured in the event. Local authorities have asked the public for information on possible witnesses. Hatton's representatives have not released any statement regarding suspected motives. Neighbors and investigators agree the blaze was started intentionally. Now, to really understand the Google ruling that opened today's episode, there is something most coverage leaves out. Most reports assume the European Court of Justice simply re-examines whether a company broke the rules. In practice, the court reviews whether the commission followed its own procedures, applied the correct legal tests, and set a proportionate penalty. It rarely retries the underlying facts. This structure means companies can succeed on narrow procedural grounds even when the core finding of dominance stands. Knowing this distinction helps listeners separate headlines about Google winning from the narrower legal victories that sometimes occur. Next time you see a report on a fine being upheld or reduced, ask which part of the Commission's reasoning was actually challenged and what precedent the ruling sets for future cases involving similar market power. Before we go, watch for further details on support measures tied to the UK forced adoptions apology expected in coming days. That's Omni View. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the Omni View summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nara Network. Links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the Nara Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Tesla Shorts Time, your daily deep dive into everything Tesla. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.